Hi, good morning. I can see some people here already. In fact, it's me. It's a bit slightly late, isn't it? So, welcome
Morning.
to everyone who's here. Hi, good morning. Let me just get the settings. Okay, recording has started. Good. That's what we want to do. Okay, so we've got people joining. I'll just keep talking a little bit as I normally do. So those of you who join can ensure you get your settings right. You got the volume correct. And that you're the right place. This is an information governance webinar by myself from N3I and looking at patient online access. And we'll start in about 5 minutes or so. Okay. Can I ask you just to put your microphones onto mute if you're, as you've just joined? I can hear a lot of rattling of papers going on at the moment. Who's doing that? Shuffling letters around, no doubt. That's great. So yeah, as you join, you don't need to have cameras on this morning. It's just me talking mostly. But if you want to keep your microphones on mute, if you want to have any questions or anything, feel free to put them into the chat. We'll do questions at the end. So there'll be plenty of time for you to ask anything you want to ask. Okay, I'm just going to get the presentation up and running, hopefully. Let's see, I've got Okay, can someone just confirm back to me that you can see that? What was the first slide of the presentation, please?
We can see it, Barry.
That's great, thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, we'll just give it a few more minutes yet. What time have we got? 29 minutes past. Yeah, give it another 2 or 3 minutes. Everyone to get settled. It's a beautiful day this morning. If any of you've been out and about this morning, I was walking my dog first thing. It was really nice, and still nice and sunny here in sunny Scunthorpe. Hopefully it is wherever you guys are. Okay. So welcome along as you're, as I can see more and more people joining. Yeah, if you could just put your microphones onto mute as you join, please, that'd be great. Be sure you all get yourselves a cup of tea or coffee. Just finish mine. It's gone a bit cold. Nothing worse than a cold coffee. Okay. I've lost my number thing now. I can't see how many people there are. I'm sure there's a few, but we'll give it another few more minutes anyway. It's 1:30 now, but we'll just give it a couple of minutes so everyone gets joined. So we're going to talk about patient online access. Given that the dates for the final date, I should say, is coming up fairly soon. This is probably the last one of these we do, and it is, to be fair, very similar to the ones I've done in the past. I just went over it this morning. The concepts are the same, and and much of what we're going to talk about is the same. What we do have now, really, which will be really useful, I think, for you all, is a couple of practice managers who've gone ahead and done it, who've switched the online system live and active, and have been for a few months, I think. So we've got some good feedback from them. hopefully their practice haven't ground to a halt and things like that. It hasn't been the worst thing in the world, but some useful feedback, I think. So we'll go through that. And I think what I have noticed on the web resources that are available, we've done a number of these national sort of rollouts of systems, various different ones. This has probably been the one that has the most supporting material available, and really good material as well. So I'm not going to just regurgitate all the stuff that they've got. That there are checklists and there are videos and there's all sorts of resources available to you. And as I say, it's some of the best resources I've seen. That they've also put an awful lot of time and effort into this. It has, I wouldn't say it's been dragged on. I think it was probably the right decision initially to pause it, because some of the stuff wasn't ready. And there wasn't enough clarity about it in the early stages. As you know, we've had about 3 delays to this. My understanding, I think now, is that on this final one, it will be going ahead. Indeed, there's now actual legislation in place that's passed through Parliament that said it has to go ahead, or that enables it to go ahead. So that it gives absolute clarity on the position. So yeah, I make it about 32. We'll start. Yeah, we'll start now anyway and get going. Obviously, it has been recorded, so they'll be available. We'll get up on our portal this afternoon. Just one thing about what we're not going to be talking about today. This isn't a presentation to look at the rights and wrongs of patient online access. There is a debate to be had, or I suspect it's already been had around that, and I know people have certain strong views about that. That's not what we're looking at here. I don't have a view on it. Well, I have a personal view, but that's not what I'm doing here. My role in terms of the data protection is to ensure that you're ready for this service, that you've done the preparation and that you're ready for it to come along. Whether it actually comes along, whether it's pulled, whether they cancel it, whether it goes ahead, whatever, that's irrelevant. And whether it's the right or wrong thing it isn't for us to be discussing here. This is to discuss the readiness element of what you need to do to enable it when it does come along. Assume that it does. So we're not going to look at the rights and wrongs. We're going to look at what you actually need to do to be ready to go with it. So let's get started. It goes by a number of different names and has done over the time it's been running. So we've had accelerating access. We seem to have dropped the accelerating bit now, and it tends just to be access to online data. And also they brought in the citizen, which I think is a slightly wider concept across government, to give citizens access to all different services online. It links in things like digital first and various other stuff. This is one element of it: citizens' access to GP data. Again, this bigger thing around citizen access to services, and access to patient records through the NHS app. The NHS app being absolute key to all of this, which in a way is a good thing, because we don't have anything to do with the NHS app. At practice level, and indeed at our level at N3I, we don't have any. We don't support the NHS app. It's supported centrally, so we don't fix people's phones. We don't look at the app on a device and say, well, it won't work on that one, but it might work on this. You need to try this. Support for the app itself is delivered centrally through the NHS, so we don't have to worry too much. So this is the contractual bit which has come out. What I was going to say, when I was putting this together this morning, and I've mentioned already that I'm not going to just regurgitate a lot of the stuff that's already essentially on the NHS England website. So I've put in quite a few links to, in this case, to the legislation and so on, and I'll make the presentation itself available on the web portal. So we'll get that done this morning, so you can go into it and follow those links if you think it's going to be useful. So rather than just me sort of talking over the stuff that they've already done. So this is a very busy. I don't like lots of text like this, but it had a couple of links in, and just seemed the easiest way to do it was just actually to copy it on. There isn't very much like this. If you've seen my presentation before, you'll know I don't do a whole lot of text like this. But this just introduces where we are now, I guess. We've had a number of delays to this program since it was first. Well, I think it was first put into the GP contract some time ago. But it's been strengthened now, and as it says in there, there's now legislation in place to say that this can go through unless patients individually opt out. And the latest date now is the 31st of October. That's the date that you must have it ready and have it switched on and available to citizens, to your patients. The GP readiness checklist we'll do in a bit more detail in a moment, because it does, as it says, tells you what you need to do and the essential actions that you're going to have to put in place. Okay. So what are we talking about really? Default access to the full patient record. Essentially, that's what it is. It's allowing patients to have access to the GP record, to the record that you hold, with all their information on it. It's not partial. It's not, it was coded stuff in the past. It's now essentially full access through the NHS app to the GP record. Couple of little provisos on that, which we'll talk about in a moment. It's through the NHS app, but other systems as well. So if you have the System 1 online, I suspect EMIS have a similar direct online service where you can log in and go to your record. Again, it will be available, the full record will be available through those systems as well. And essentially, it's a subject access request, but on an ongoing online basis, if you like. So you're all very familiar with subject access requests. Patients have the right legally to come along and ask you to have a look at their record, to have a look at all the information that you hold on them, which is predominantly, they mostly want their record. So this system is allowing them to have that access enabled, just so they can look at it at any time. They don't have to come along, they don't have to make a request, and you don't have to go through the processing bit, because it's by default, it's online to them anyway. However, as I've just said there, if you get a subject access request, you go through a process, don't you? You check for serious harm and third-party data, and you do probably a bit of a sense check of the record before it's provided to the patient. Essentially now, because that access is available in real time online at any time the patient wants it, you've got to be doing those two checks in real time as well, because potentially that data is going to be there. So I think what it will do in terms of third party and serious harm is, I do get a sense sometimes that they're overused. So I think doing it real time will give you more sense of, because it's happening now, so the things like test results and so on will be coming through, and you'll be assessing them there and then at that point before they go onto the record, rather than when you get a subject access request and you're looking at information from, say, 5 years ago, where it's not perhaps as relevant, and you don't know the context around it, because you're doing it as you're going along. I think they will actually be done better. I think those tests will be more obvious, because you're in the real time and you've got the context of them as you're doing them. So the third party checks, there are, again, as you hopefully know, because we've talked about this before, there are support documents around third party checks and the serious harm test. And I would ask you to have a look at those and ensure that you know exactly what it means. The third party one in particular, I think we have seen people in the past who've got it, got misinterpreted perhaps, and over redacted at times. So ensure that you know what the third party issue is and how it's described in the information that you can redact. The same with the serious harm test. Very few cases should really fall into that serious harm test. It should be a very unusual thing. And again, I think there's sometimes a sense that it's been done more than necessary, perhaps. So some of the issues that have been raised around access to online, and these are addressed in the supporting material that's available on NHS England's websites. Safeguarding, yeah, it is an issue. It's always been an issue to some extent with records, how much information you record, and it's just, this highlights it. Obviously, people can access that data as you go along, and I think you can certainly afford to take things on the safe side, if you like, in terms of safeguarding. If you think information shouldn't be on the record, then it doesn't go on. And you're doing that, as I said, because you're doing it in real time as you go along. You're not waiting for a subject access request. You'll have the information at the time, and the systems, as you know, that both TPP and EMIS have been configured to allow you to to put information on a record, because the other point is you don't want to lose information. You don't want to set up almost a secondary record for a patient with all the stuff that they can't see. We have to ensure that people's information is available to you. And the primary reason for the patient record at GP practice is for you guys to work with, to be the information to be there for the patient for when you need to see them and to provide the services you do. It's almost a secondary bit that they can see it. So you need to ensure that the safeguarding stuff is done and done properly. And there's a lot of good information about how to look after that. The coercion bit is raised quite a lot, and I'm not sure we've quite got an answer to it. I suspect that there probably isn't a straightforward answer to how we do this. It will again be a small number of situations where some individuals are in a relationship or sometimes in a family situation where they are put under pressure to reveal things that are in their record, and I suspect the same would apply probably to banking records as well, and to other sources of information where people are in that type of relationship where they're forced to divulge what's in a record. There are ways that we can do this. There's some technical ways around how you can redact information and not have it visible if you feel that's appropriate. And there's this concept of ghost appointments, where if you have someone who comes to see you about something, which, let's say domestic violence as an example, but they wouldn't want that to be shown on the record that they've been to see the GP for that reason, you can make an appointment that looks like it was for something else, whereas the real bit is actually sat behind that. And there's a really good video on this on the NHS England website. It's a GP who talks through that whole process, probably way better than I'm trying to do at the moment. But I think you get the concept. And if you listen to his video, he explains it in detail about how you create the appointment and how it can be made not visible, or it can be made to appear something different to what's actually recorded in the record itself. And then obviously there's information you can redact. But the coercion issue is out there. It's a real issue for many many couples, and and within certain family situations as well. But there are some technical things we can do, but I suspect that it's almost a bigger issue outside just access to medical records. There's only so much that we can do. Okay, so this is the fundamental bit from today, I think. And this should be your to-do list. Hopefully you can tick off quite a few of these already. So if you have a policy around access to records, access for patients to be able to access their information, you should be reviewing it and updating it. And there are some examples out there. If you don't have one, if you want to use one again on NHS England, there are some examples of what you might want to use in terms of a policy. A process which I noticed this morning, for when you get to become age 16, there are certain things obviously within the record that changes at that point in terms of record access. The whole age thing is quite a complex area. I know I was dealing with a couple of requests yesterday related to age and at what stage younger children become decision makers are really around their own information. So again, that there is guidance on that, but it's a tricky one. But it already is to some extent. It already questions around how people make decisions and how children make decisions around information. Anywhere between sort of 10 and 16 are complex, but there is some quite good guidance out on there. One of the things I think that we are expecting to see, and this is a benefit of the system, I guess, although it can be seen as a negative, if you like, but I think it's a benefit, are people who look at the record and want to make amendments. So an amendment that you might want to make would be where someone looks at the record and says that's factually incorrect. And it could be something as strange as I came to see the GP and I was looking, I had a pain in my left knee, and somehow on the system it's got recorded that I had a pain in my right knee. Clearly just a factual error in recording it, and you want that changed. and that should be straightforward enough, and you should have a process for how people can do that. So changing a factual error in the system where it's clear that there's no other impact other than it's actually the right thing to do. You want to have it. What we don't do is, in that situation, you don't kind of, well, in old paper records, cross out left and just put right and marked in error and stuff. You can actually totally delete the bit that was wrong. So delete left and add in right, as if it's never, the old bit as if it never was recorded incorrectly. Where you get into more complicated areas are matters of opinion, and you will get this. I'm sure we do already. People that come often and quite frequently related to mental health issues, but not always. People who don't agree with what's written in their record for whatever reason, and want it changed, and there can be a lot of reasons for that. And you should have some sort of process to deal with it. But just remember that in general terms, information that's a medical opinion made by a clinician with the facts as they were at the time should be left in place as it is, even if the patient doesn't necessarily agree with it, or even to some extent, if it's shown later on to have been incorrect, you can add in an amendment, you can add in some context, and you can say, well, with later information, it's now clear that this is the case. And patients can add in their own views. Their own view can be recorded against it, that they may disagree with the diagnosis, for example. But medical opinions need to stay in and be left as they are. And that's just something, as I say, that it's something that you've got now already. Potentially, as you get more patients looking at their records, you may have more of these amendment requests coming forward. What you may also get is, and I think we've seen a number of these, essentially the patients will notice an error that's been made. Sometimes the occasional classic ones we see, the wrong letter has been attached into the wrong record. That happens. We hope it doesn't, and we'd like to see staff, training and awareness so that it reduces to as low a number as we can possibly get, but bearing in mind that human error will generally always come in at some point potentially. Again, having a process to fix that, to quickly be able to change and to amend a record. So that's something you need to consider. I don't think we're going to be overwhelmed with that. I think there is some concern, there certainly was some concern at one time, that we give everyone access to their records. The next day they'll all be ringing up saying, I don't agree with this, and can you change this? I'm not sure we see that happening, but certainly you will see a number of these, because we have done, and that's the experience of some of the practices that have gone live already, but not to the extent that I think some people were, some of the doom mongers were talking about. Okay, so on your to-do list, I suspect actually the second one should probably be even more important: staff training and awareness. Everybody needs to know about this change. Everybody who's involved in the practice with looking at records, with entering data into records, and obviously clinical staff who are meeting and creating the records need to be aware of this change that's coming along. And that, I suspect, needs to be done through some sort of formal training within the practice. There are loads of the videos, as I said, and material there. They are really good. They're short, and informative, and just well put together. And so, I'd advise you, obviously, as practice managers, you're going to look through them, perhaps pick out a couple that you want to get people to watch, and play them through. And they are, as I say, it is pretty good. If you want to see what's going to happen, set up a test patient, as it says there. There's guidance on how to do that in one of the sections on the website. But yeah, you can set up a test patient, and you can see what the system's going to look like when you look at it, which is quite useful. Again, following on the staff awareness bit, it might be useful to nominate a lead person if that's not going to be yourself. In some of the larger practices, you might want to nominate someone to be in charge of doing all of this work, to be the one who checks the videos, who makes sure that everyone has had the opportunity, or not just the opportunity, has actually had some awareness training about this change. Discuss it with staff, and discuss the patient benefits as well. Well, both the staff benefits and patient benefits. It is easy when you get a change like this to focus on a little bit on the negative side, on it's going to create more work, it's going to create this, you're going to have to do this. These are all additional things. However, the benefits of it are there as well. Potentially, they may not be straight off benefits, but in the longer term, things such as the data quality of records, by the fact that we're all looking at them all the time, should improve things. It should be a good thing that people will notice errors. If there's an error, we want it rectified. We want patients to tell us if they notice something that's not right, because it's in everyone's benefit to have things put right if they occasionally go wrong. And just patients being more involved in their record. It should be a good thing. We should see that as a good thing. And there are lots of examples of the benefits again on the resources website. And then how you promote this to staff, to patients. There is a sense that it's been given a fairly soft launch. There isn't any major national communication about this for a number of reasons, I suspect. First of all, I think there is a very clear awareness centrally that practices are incredibly busy, that this is another thing on top of all the other stuff that you're dealing with. So there's we don't want to make a massive big thing about this. People will become aware of it over time, and also of course the fact that people aren't, the practices aren't all yet ready to be switched on. So the switch on is coming over a long period of time. So if there's a central message to go out, you'd have patients come in and you may not be ready for it yet. So centrally, the communication about this is fairly low key. And there isn't a massive splash, as there has been with some of the other stuff, as we remember in days gone past when they did things like care data and so on. So it's been a bit more low key nationally, but locally, yeah, you should have some sort of communication about it within the practice. And there's, again, material. There are awareness material, there are posters and leaflets and things you can put on your websites and stuff like that. So there's plenty of material there, and you should at least consider how you're going to promote it to your patients. Think about using your patient participation groups, spread it around through there, so you get their views, see what they think. That's really good engagement to do. So that's the main to-do list. There's a technical bit which I'm going to talk about in a moment as well, which is another to do, but that's a slightly separate thing. This is the overall preparation that you need to do to be ready to go live. Okay, I got these two next bits from a message that was circulated around the other day to all practice managers. So you probably will have seen this already, and it's just about how you go ahead with it to actually get that switch on before the actual end date when everyone will be switched on. Well, no, sorry. I should say it's actually not quite clear what will happen if you don't get switched on. I should say that. So that I said the deadline date further up is now in legislation. No one is saying what's going to happen. It's a contractual requirement and so on, but it doesn't say what will happen if you don't. But you can probably guess, or you can probably think of something. So EMIS practices, what you can now do is you can request EMIS to automatically enable all the records. Clearly, you wouldn't want to go through having to do each patient individually. I don't even know why it says that. You'd want to do the whole practice in one go. And then it says there are 2 sessions remaining in September and October, where EMIS will bunch you all together and do this bulk enablement. And you can book a slot. It says on there, if you follow that link, which I'm not going to, but as I say, this will be available. So, but you should have had this already anyway. But I'll put this presentation up, and you can click on there and book your slot. So that's for your EMIS practices. What you need to do. TPP, like you do it yourself. There's a user guide on there. It says you need a Futures login. What I'll do, I'll get that guide down, because if you haven't got a Future NHS login, it's a bit of a faff. So I'll get it downloaded, and then I'll attach it separately, so you don't need the login. I kind of sprung to my mind this morning as I was reading that. I thought, well, not everyone may have a login. So if you have, you just click on the link there. It takes you to the user guide. As it says on there, it takes about an hour or so to work through it, and their support team is available to help you, as is our support team. If any of the technical stuff that you come across, the settings and configurations, which is what I'm going to mention in a moment, we're here to support you through that. So that's the EMIS and the TPP guidance stuff around how you get yourself switched on. Right, this is the one that I've literally had through this morning, which is why I haven't really been able to do very much with it. And this is just an example of it. I could share the whole thing, but it's a bit of a faff. So what I'll do is we get this, or the ICB, I should say, gets this spreadsheet through every week, and it tells the situation of where all the practices are with their enablement. You can see on here all different ones and how people are doing. What we do is we go through, and whether there's something red, we notify you. So we'll have come to you in the past if you've got one of these red bits here, if these numbers are really high. Now what they relate to are those a thought. When this whole thing started, there was a thing went round to say that if you didn't want to go live, one of the ways of doing it was to apply a certain code to all of your patients, and that would prevent any of them from having their data go live. And some practices did that, and what we're saying is you really need to kind of wind back on that, because it's not an appropriate way to go ahead. And indeed, as you see, the legislation says specifically that patients are going to be allowed this. Therefore, if we take the example here, 96% of patients have got this 104 code applied. That's not going to be deemed as appropriate, because it's fairly certain that 96% of the patient population aren't the ones who wouldn't want this. There'll be more than that who would like to have the access to their records. So I'll put this up on our portal as well. But as I say, what we do is we also come out and check if there are any red notes on this. On the configuration settings here, some practices might need to have a look at the settings within System 1 or EMIS. And that's, again, when you get this, when you look at it, if you find your own practice, look across, make sure it all looks fine. If there's any red bits, you look at the glossary bit down here, and you can, obviously I can't, it's just a screenshot, so I can't click on it, but it tells you basically what that means, what the red N means, and what you have to do. And if you have any problems with any of that bit, contact us, contact the N3i service desk, and our guys can talk you through what actions you need to take. Okay, as I said, that's literally just come through. Yeah, it's a weekend in 13th of August. So this is the most recent one, and I'll get it put up on the web portal first, hopefully this morning. Okay, any questions here? There again, because you'll get this the actual presentation. There's a couple of guidance things there. It's actually straightforward. I wondered if they changed it with obviously NHS Digital changing to being all NHS England now. So I just did a search this morning on Google for access to patient records, and this stuff came up. As you can see, these were the films of all different bits you need to do. How to redact in System 1 actually tells you step by step how to redact in EMIS Web. As you can see, there's loads of stuff, and what practice staff need to know. So there's absolutely loads of stuff on there. I'm not just going to regurgitate the whole thing. It's all there for you to look at, and I'd suggest you just need to go and have a look through it. Okay, let me just come off that now, because I've got a couple of other practice managers who very kindly agreed to give their views on how it's gone when they've done their switch on. So I've got Lisa Hamlin, who's a System 1 practice, and Alison Lamin, who is an EMIS practice. Can I ask? Well, I'll ask Lisa first. I know we spoke earlier, Lisa. Would you mind just coming off mute and giving us some sense of how it went, how the sort of switch on went for you, and perhaps some of the issues or anything that you've noticed or that you feel would be useful to pass on?
Yeah, sure. So we switched on in beginning of February when you could either opt out or just let it happen. All the staff had a couple of sessions where I'd had training meetings with them, so they were all aware. what was going ahead and what the patients would be able to view. I did do the NHS test patient, and it is really good to do that, because even ongoing, I still even look at that it's on my mobile, the NHS test patient, but it just means that if you've got stuff coming through on your workflow and that, you can see what the patient can see. So an example with your workflow, if the GP puts comments, that when that's updated, it's also updated on the NHS app, so the patient can see if the GP's put prescriptions please issue, the patient will see those comments that they actually write on the workflow electronically. So something like that's quite handy to know, really. You have to be really careful with your workflow and your correspondence coming through. That's been our biggest challenge, I would say, just making sure that when it's going on the patient record, if it's got anything in there that says, please do not let the patient see this, how you handle that. We still putting processes in place, but I can honestly say, even though we have had few hiccups, we have had no bad feedback from any patients. So in that respect, it has been quite nice, and we've had some good feedback as well, because there is a lot of patients that actually do go on the record and look, and when they're in up, they say, I can see what the doctor's put already, but can you just explain, or can I book another appointment, because it might say patient to rebook in 4 weeks time. And so there has been a lot of benefits, really. And the only other thing is, we did go through the safeguarding exercise, so we have done the enhanced review indicator read code on some patients' records, which then prompts the GP, when they're actually doing a consultation on that record, whether they want to do it confidential or whether they want to leave it within the record, which has been quite good, because if they do it as confidential, then they do a ghost consultation, just saying they've seen that patient that day, but don't put all the information in. And then the only other thing is, we've had an incident yesterday with Leeds General Hospital where they sent through a couple of patient letters for us, saying that it shouldn't go on the patient record because the patient wasn't aware of the information. But the information in the record was key for the record, and also it had follow-up information that if we hadn't have done that follow-up information with the patient, they wouldn't have known where the information was coming from. So in that respect, it's just meant that we've had to contact the patient sooner, probably, than what we probably would have done if that had have just gone into the normal workflow. So it's just about being a little bit more vigilant sometimes, but I can honestly say it hasn't given us loads of extra stuff to do. It has reduced things as well, because a lot of patients do look at the records and then don't ring us up.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Lisa. That's really useful. Alison, are you on? I know I didn't get to speak to you this morning. Are you available to
Yeah.
just give some views on how it's gone for you?
Yeah, we've not really had any issues. We switched on last December. A couple of things that have been brought up to us are patient finding wrong information in the notes or not agreeing with information that's been put in the notes. We've had a couple of patients who've got wrong documents, for another patient in the records. But to be honest, we've not had any real issues with it at all. And I think when the girls are doing the workflow or doing the scanning the documents in, anything sort of safeguarding or, like blue door referrals, domestic violence, things like that, they always make it so it's non-visible online for the patients, just in case. But yeah, it's gone really well, actually. And I think the other thing as well, when patients are wanting information out of the notes, it makes it easier for you to just say, if you've got online access, you can access your notes yourself. So it's saving us time, finding information out for patients.
Thanks, Alison. That's really useful. And again, I think highlights the point I made during the presentation about we are going to see inaccuracies. We know that, it'd be lovely if we get to the point where we can eliminate all this and everybody's record is absolutely perfect. But it is a good thing that patients now are able to highlight these issues to practices, and you can get it fixed, because it's in everyone's benefit to have records being spot on and accurate. And perhaps we do have to accept that occasionally mistakes will be made, no matter how much we'd like them not to be. But this will hopefully help us fix more of those mistakes. So that's trying to see a positive out of a negative here, but yeah, trying to keep that on a positive note. I think it will be. That was one of the thing that just came into my mind. No, can I ask if anyone has any questions for Lisa or Alison? If they'd like to, I'm more than happy to kind of, and I know they are. I really appreciate the two of you coming in line. But if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, do you want to speak up now? Come off mute and just speak up. No. Well, what if you do? If you want to come through me, if you have any sort of practical questions to say, oh, hang on, what happens when this does this, and what happens when I switch this on? Yeah, please, come through me. I'm more than happy to pass that on to Lisa or Alison. We can ask use their experience. There was one thing actually and I think it was just as Alison was talking about something that reminded me. One of the issues we've had, and I haven't had many, obviously not many have come back to us, as I said at the start, the NHS app itself and the way it functions and works isn't a matter for us. It's nothing we can do. You're probably going to have to get used to having, you will get patients come and say, I've got an iPhone 3, 7, whatever, and it won't work on this. Well, that's nothing that you can fix, and it's nothing that we can fix. And perhaps have just a little note of, here, you need to speak to these guys, and the central team will look at that. But one thing that has come through to us is there are certain types of format of documents, and it's quite a common thing that the hospital send out not letters, they're technically mostly images, and there's a certain type of format that they use. And I believe it's a problem in System 1 and EMIS already, that this format, which is, I think is called a Kettering type of file. Anyway, that file format can't be read, and so that's a problem. And I know a number of people have gone to practices and say, with their smartphones, saying, look, I can't get this to show. It's not an issue that we can resolve. It's an issue that I've certainly passed it back to the national team to look at, and they've just said, well, it's almost one of those things. That's the format that the hospitals use, and until they change it, there's nothing that we can really do about it. So that's, again, just one little thing to note. I'm just looking at the questions in the chat. Andrew, yeah, as I say, it's not entirely clear what will happen on the 1st of November. Whether you will be switched on kind of automatically, I suspect not. I suspect that there will be a lot of, shall we say, encouragement for you to go live. This has been a long time in the preparation and lead up because of the number of times it's been delayed. So the 31st of October is now a hard deadline. What happens if you don't meet it, I don't know, but I suspect they're not gonna, you won't be switched on, without your knowledge, if you like. Just look at these questions again. Yeah, it is a large job, Andrew, and I'm not sure whether you can do, I presume you can do reports on certain codes that would give you an indication of the sort of patients you need to be looking at. Again, I think there is some stuff on the web resources bit, essentially about how you start looking, the sort of things that you need to look at patients for the fairly small number, I suspect, who you wouldn't grant access to, and then the other ones that you need to redact the information from the record. But there is something around how you search for certain codes within the records to help you do that. Can you ask the practitioners who are live, have you had any requests for retrospective access since an enabling perspective? Yeah, Linda, that's a really good point. It's worth remembering that what we're doing here is switching on forward access. So when patients get this, they're not looking at the history, and probably this is a point I think for Andrew as well. You're not looking at historic information. What this is about is switching on, when you do your switch on, for information being available going forward. Anything that gets put on in the future, this will apply to, they'll have access to. They won't necessarily automatically have access to the historic record. although they can request that. But how you manage that bit is entirely up to you. All being asked here is the future stuff. Yeah, Andrew breathes a sigh of relief. Yeah, we should have mentioned that at the beginning. Sorry about that. Okay, so my job now is I'm going to get the presentation and all that resource stuff onto the website for you, and this presentation. If anyone wants to watch it again or use it as part of your training, I think you guys need to think about that to-do list. And also, I'll put the configuration spreadsheet up there as well. Just check on there to make sure that you're all or no red markers on your practice. And then think about contacting EMIS and TPP, either doing it yourself or getting, if you're an EMIS practice, get yourself onto those bulk uploads that are coming along. Okay, I think that's probably enough for now. As you know, please, if you've got any queries, any questions, just drop me a line, and I'll go off now and try and get this stuff onto the web portal as quick as I can. Thank you all very much for listening this morning, and special thanks to Lisa and Alison for helping out and giving their experience. Thank you all. Cheers, guys.